Calder Vale is the sort of place that would appeal to the producers of the last of the summer wine, only without all the "oh, what's he doing on me doorstep?" and "oh no, having me mechanized bathtub" crap. It's essentially a Victorian mill village nestled in the bottom crack of a steep-sided valley that suffers from a lack of residential parking. Surprising really, given the even greater lack of tourist traps. The Calder bit of the village's name, also the moniker of the river running through it that powers the mill, is thought to stem from the Old Norse word "coldre", meaning cold, which too bloody right it was when me and Jeannie Mackintosh visited. My nose turned blue and fell off as we crossed the bridge, although that might have been down to the amount of Valium I'd snorted to help me survive the excitement. The Vale bit of the village's name, well, that should be patently obvious even to a BBC journalist. Calder Vale was founded, or possibly just found in the same way that you might find an interesting crack with moss growing out of it, in 1835 by a couple of porridge-loving Quaker brothers called Jonathan and Richard Jackson. They built a cotton mill there. Well, there had to be one in Lancashire somewhere, if only to give the county its internationally recognised brand. It was called Lappet Mill for reasons that Wikipedia doesn't divulge, and it's still working apparently. Until he kicked the bucket, Lappet Mill produced the red, black and white checkered headscarves for that genial bundle of diplomatic fun, Yasser Arafat, allegedly. We took a look at the Jackson 2's Quaker meeting house down Culverhouse Lane in nearby Garstang, just to add a touch of eclecticism to this otherwise cliched film. I've mentioned before that I like Quakers, especially with Lyle's golden syrup. Nonetheless, we refused the offer from the extremely friendly woman who'd emerged from the kitchen door as we were filming to have a look round inside. Gregarious strangers unnerve me. I usually end up biting them. Just round the corner from the meeting house on Dimples Lane stands the Oaklands Care Home, where Michelle used to work many decades ago. It's hard to say exactly how old the building is, ostensibly Edwardian judging by the exterior, but apparently older inside. Michelle informed me that the place was haunted, footsteps in the attic, Cromwellian soldiers marching about during breakfast, that sort of thing. However, as you can probably tell from the footage, I didn't exactly relish the prospect of getting arrested for sneaking about on the front lawn, so that's all you're gonna get on that subject. Around another next corner, where the River Calder runs underneath the Lancaster Canal, stands the enigmatic Skull Bridge. With the usual lack of inspiration that the CRT have regarding such matters, it's actually called Bridge 53. But we prefer Skull Bridge because of the unexplained folk horror carvings on it. We've no idea who put them there or why, so we'd better ignore them and return to our original plot. Back in Calder Vale, the Victorian Jackson brothers also built most of the terraced houses surrounding the aforementioned Lappet Mill. You'd have thought with the sort of money they had that they could have afforded to pay someone to build the houses for them. I know I use that joke every week, but I like it, so live with it. The Calder Vale locals who occupy these houses are an enterprising lot, hit hard by the recent cost of living crisis. One householder, it seems, in a desperate attempt to afford the petrol for his E-Type, had chopped up his outdoor crib from Christmas, and was now selling off the splinters as expensive kindling. Apparently the baby Jesus burned particularly bright. Calder Vale also has a Methodist church and a village hall, the latter of which hosts the post office, the brownies, of the Girl Guidelet variety, not the cakes, the Scouts, the WI, and the village club. You get the impression, because the place is so small, that some of the local residents must be doubling up in their community roles. Every Sunday in May, the same set of villagers organise the quaintly Edwardian-sounding Bluebell Teas. How bloody twee can you get? It's like Midsummer meets St Mary Mead. The place is just gagging for some violent, macabre, multiple murders, possibly involving a giant cheese. About halfway between Calder Vale and Oakenclough squats St John the Evangelist, consecrated on August the 12th, 1863, but successfully treated later with dulcolax. The church was built by public subscription, whatever that means. Next door stands Calder Vale Primary School, itself an isolated Victorian structure, home to 30 pupils and 2 teachers. If only all of our childhoods had consisted of such salad days, with only a handful of friends to choose from, playing tag amongst the dead. Behind the church runs the precipitous, surprisingly health and safety ignorant walk back down to Calder Vale, high above the river, where some helpful locals had placed the occasional aid to euthanasia bench in an effort to clear the village of elderly residents. We drove to Oakenclough because we couldn't be arsed walking, and we wanted to take a gander at the allegedly oldest, established in 1775 and disestablished in more recent times, and now presumably also the most knackered paper mill in Britain. Powered once again by the River Calder, said paper mill once boasted the largest water wheel in England. Don't they all? Now all it boasts is a derelict health hazard. In 1887, Quaker Jonathan Jackson, having finished building Calder Vale and run out of stuff to do at weekends, YouTube not having been invented yet, bought the paper mill from Richard Curtis, thus freeing up his busy schedule so that he could write more rom-coms for Rowan Atkinson. Possibly. If our adventure hadn't been exciting enough already, we drove on to the inconsequential hamlet of Whitechapel, whose namesake in London at least had the decency to harbour Jack the Ripper. Whitechapel in Lancashire is so pointless it isn't even mentioned on the large-scale Ordnance Survey maps. There is a tradition associated with this flea speck of a place, however, that we thought was worth a mention. Every Shrove Tuesday, aka Pancake Day, in times long past, the local kids, both of them, would visit the equally local households, all 3 of them, and ask politely, "Please, a pancake?" To which said residents, presumably because they were either deaf or thick, rewarded them with oranges, gingerbread and sweets. On which suitably disappointing note, click like if you're that way inclined, subscribe if you want, but whatever else you do, don't forget to join us again for the next uninspired episode of Lancashire Footnotes, before we lose the will to live.